I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas threatens to cut off Hamas in Gaza. The UK refuses to apologize for helping create the Jewish state, and some major archaeological finds are exposed in Caesarea. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Palestinians are on edge more than ever today amid stunning reports that Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas may take unprecedented steps to restore his party's governance over Gaza. Sources in Ramallah say the Palestinian Authority leader is about to issue an ultimatum to Hamas that it either turn over control of the Gaza Strip to the PA or all funding funneled to the enclave from the West Bank will stop. This would be revolutionary because it would mark a de facto split between the two Palestinian entities ever since Hamas seized control of Gaza in the bloody civil war with Fatah a decade ago. The terrorist organization has collected tens of millions of dollars in taxes, but Hamas mainly invests the money into its own military infrastructure rather than that of running the Gaza territory. Consequently, the Palestinian Authority has continued to foot the bill for Gaza's services, including fuel for Gaza's power station. The plant ran out of oil this past week, leaving the 2 million residents in the coastal enclave with only about 4 hours of electricity a day. Concern in Israel is mounting over more than just the Fatah-Hamas dispute and the situation in Syria. The Israeli defense establishment is now even worried that the ignition of tensions between the United States and North Korea could launch a war which will carry dramatic implications for the Jewish state. Starting locally, it's uncertain at this point how Hamas would react to the PA's potential threat to completely cut off the flow of cash. A senior Israeli military source is warning that a total electrical blackout in power could lead to a full-blown humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Hospitals in the Strip are now being operated by generators, but those fuel reserves could run out in only a few more days. The last time the terror group was confronted by internal pressure over its lagging economy in 2014, it sparked a diversionary war against Israel. Turning to Syria, the army official says Israel is keeping such a close eye on the civil war that it was able to monitor last month's sarin gas attack in Idlib in real time. The toxic chemical usage is being widely attributed to the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Meanwhile, the source confirmed that an Israeli strike in Syria last month succeeded in destroying 100 missiles while being shipped to the Hezbollah terror group, while also hitting another target in the Arab Republic. He also warned that if Washington actually goes to war with Pyongyang, Jerusalem should prepare for less U.S. support than usual due to strained resources. Here at home, he added that the security establishment is disappointed that the settlers who were arrested after attacking Israeli soldiers in the West Bank last week have already been released. The officer said that anyone who assaults state forces should face far harsher punishment. Joining me now in the studio to discuss yesterday's diplomatic spat between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and German Foreign Minister Sigmar Gabriel is Olga Deutsch, Director of the European Desk at NGO Monitor. Thank you so much for coming in.
Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So yesterday's canceled meeting with Gabriel yesterday Netanyahu canceled the meeting with Gabriel because he was meeting with certain NGOs that the state is not a fan of. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, it became sort of a scandal in the last 24 hours. Mm-hmm. The Prime Minister basically made an ultimatum, sort of an ultimatum to the Foreign Minister of Germany that in case he proceeds to meet with Breaking the Silence and B'Tselem, the two human rights organizations, Israeli ones here, he will not meet with him. And he went on and met, and the meeting was canceled. I believe there was an attempt from the Prime Minister's office to reach to the Foreign Minister of Germany by phone, which did not happen in the end.
I see. So, and what are the problems with these organizations that the government has with them? Why is that such a hot button for Netanyahu? Well,
I've come here representing a research organization, a research institute, so I cannot speak on behalf of the Prime Minister, but this is part of a much broader and larger phenomenon, and I believe that these two organizations are sort of serving as a symbol of a much bigger issue. Based on the statement that was issued by the Prime Minister's office, they would have wished for the German Foreign Minister to meet with a broader range of representatives of the civil society and not only of one specific side to the conflict, because obviously Breaking the Silence and B'Tselem have a certain agenda presenting the conflict.
Yeah, I mean, when you say broader issues, are these NGOs receiving foreign funding?
Well, that's what, first of all, they're presenting a specific political niche in the Israeli society, which would be the far left. But yes, they are also enjoying very generous German federal funding. In case of breaking the silence, in the past 4 years, they received 5.5 million shekels, only from Germany. And B'Tselem received 1.7 million shekels in the last 4 years. And this is from Germany alone. And there are no, these organizations
so we can assume that there are others.
We know. This is what we do. We look at the activities of the NGOs as well as the funding of all the NGOs that are involved in the Arab-Israeli conflict. So I know for a fact that both organizations receive generous donations from many other European countries as well.
Are there other organizations that we should be worried about, that Israel should be worried about?
Well, it's not just Israel. I don't think this is an issue that should be Israel's issue alone, given that the European governments are so vested and so interested in taking a part, a proactive one, both by funding and being a partner in the discourse. It's a joint issue, and I think that the two organizations that we are talking about are just the top of the iceberg, and by far do not represent the most dangerous narratives that we see there. We just issued a new report that actually talks a lot about it, that there are plenty of Palestinian, Israeli, or European organizations who use the term of human rights and to whitewash what is promoting violence, inciting to violence, justifying terror attacks, and in some certain cases they have direct ties to terror organizations such as PFLP, which we here in Israel know from the earlier days, but actually they have claimed responsibilities for many of the attacks in the past 10 years here as well.
Well, thank you so much for clearing some of that up, Olga Deutsch. Thank you so much for coming in.
My pleasure.
So far, Israel has largely accepted, albeit reluctantly, calls from the United States President Donald Trump to hold back on settlement building. But now there are reports that a huge construction project outside Jerusalem is about to be announced, and Israel somehow doesn't see it as conflicting with that agreement. Local media is reporting that 10,000 new housing units are about to be built over the 1967 lines. The plan's likely to be unveiled on May 23rd as part of Jerusalem Day celebrations on the 50th anniversary of the city's reunification. The new homes are believed to be intended for ultra-Orthodox Jews in East Jerusalem. If it does go ahead, it will be one of the largest housing projects in recent years. Even though Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is anxious to avoid any tensions with Washington, he also remains adamant that all areas of Jerusalem are under Israeli sovereignty. East Jerusalem was legally annexed immediately after the Six-Day War. Last month, the premier stated publicly that even though he's still in the process of reaching an understanding with the White House on West Bank settlement building, the imposition of restrictions on East Jerusalem is off the table. He then reiterated that he will not negotiate a construction freeze on new homes in Jewish neighborhoods of East Jerusalem. Israel considers the unified city as the eternal and indivisible capital of the Jewish people. On the 2nd of November 1917, the British government issued a formal statement supporting the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in the land of Israel. As the 100th anniversary of that event draws near, Palestinians have been demanding an apology from Britain. Well, now London is issuing another statement that is the last thing the Palestinians wanted to hear. The government of the United Kingdom is not only vehemently rejecting the notion of apologizing, but says it's proud of the role it played in helping to create modern Israel. Nearly a century ago, on the eve of conquering the then Ottoman territory of Palestine, Britain's Foreign Secretary, Lord Arthur James Balfour, issued the Declaration. The text said the founding of the Jewish state on land to which they have such strong historical and religious ties was the right and moral thing to do, particularly following, quote, centuries of persecution. This year, a Palestinian group called the Balfour Apology Campaign has been spearheading anti-British protests, including an online petition. The apology issue would be debated in Parliament if the appeal manages to gain a requisite number of signatures. The PLO has branded the declaration a colonialist project and demanded the British atone for their crime against the Palestinian people. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the campaign is just further proof of Palestinians refusing to accept Israel's right to exist as a Jewish state. The British Foreign Office responded with its, quote, "We're not sorry" memo. It added that a lot has happened since 1917, and perhaps the declaration should have also called for the right of self-determination for the non-Jewish communities. However, the statement stressed, the important thing now is to look forward to establishing security and justice for both Israelis and Palestinians through a lasting peace. Cybercrime is a growing threat worldwide, with more and more hackers creating sophisticated methods for stealing your personal information every day. Joining me today in the studio is Itai Glick, the CEO of Otyro Solutions, which is working to keep your private information exactly that, private. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me here. Thank you.
So my first question is, what are the biggest cyber threats that are facing the world today?
Well, today we can see ransomware as a very big threat to users, to endpoint customers, to organizations, in which somebody sends you an email, looks very innocent, and when you open the attachment in the email, it will infect your computer, usually with a ransomware, and then they will ask for money. Just a few hours ago, a city from New York has been also hacked with a ransomware, and they had to pay $32,000 to get the data back.
So they literally hack into your computer, they take the data, and they say, pay me or it's gone.
It's encrypted on your computer. You want a key? Pay me.
I see. So how does Votyro, how does your company, how does your company address these issues?
Well, our company developed a unique technology that is capable to neutralize zero-day and undisclosed exploits. In those attacks mentioned in many other targeted attacks, you would see that the attackers are using a zero-day or an undisclosed exploit. And our technology is capable to neutralize that exploit and provide a safe-to-edit version of the same file, so it would not infect your computer when opening.
I see. Now, I understand just earlier today, actually, there was a cyber attack on Israel.
Yes.
How does your company fit into this?
So within the last 3 weeks or so, we have been tracking an attack that started from an academic institute in Israel. That attack masqueraded an email address from one of their users and started to send emails to other friends of him and other people in the industry.
Oh.
In that email, they could have different subjects that relate to those people, and they sent about 400 attacks. And in that case, they used an exploit that was actually discovered by the shadow brokers, which hacked the CIA and got data out. So the exploit was made public, and Microsoft has already patched it, but a lot of organizations don't patch their system. The ones that had Votyro are safe and will remain safe.
All right, well, we hope that that extends to everybody, and thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, in a landmark move made Tuesday, a Detroit court has just accepted the guilty plea from anti-Israel activist and terrorist Rasmea Odeh. Odeh stands charged with failing to disclose her criminal terrorist past to the immigration authority in her applications for United States citizenship. As a consequence, the 69-year-old Odeh will be deported to Jordan in the months ahead. Her first conviction was in 2014, where she was sentenced to 18 months in prison. The time was never served, however, as the verdict was overturned. The second trial was scheduled, and Odeh eventually accepted a plea agreement in which she would avoid jail time as long as she pled guilty and forfeited her U.S. citizenship. Odeh was convicted by Israeli courts in 1970 for 2 bombings, one of which resulted in the death of 2 young men in a Jerusalem supermarket, 21-year-old Leon Kanner and 22-year-old Eddie Jaffe. She was sentenced to serve a life term in prison, but was traded in 1979 with the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, or the PFLP. In 1994, she applied for a United States visa to join some of her family members in Michigan. Then again in 2004, she applied for citizenship. She failed to disclose her terrorist past and prison sentence, however, on both applications. Such a record surely would have disqualified her. According to Special Agent Steve Francis of Homeland Security Investigations in Detroit, quote, "The United States will never be a safe haven for individuals seeking to distance themselves from their pasts," end quote. Odeh's defense argued once that she had been tortured in prison and suffered from PTSD, possibly giving her just cause in lying on her application. But the presiding judge, Gershwin Drain, ruled these arguments irrelevant to her case, and as part of her plea agreement, she signed that she made the false statements, quote, "intentionally and not as a result of any mistake, post-traumatic stress disorder, or any other psychological issue or condition, or for any innocent reason." In some lighter news, for the first time in Israel's history, a female judge has just been appointed to serve in the Sharia court system. Hannah Khatib was appointed by unanimous election through the Kadis, or the Committee to Elect Sharia Judges. Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked, who heads the Kadis, said the election of a female Muslim religious judge should have happened a long time ago. Khatib is from the Lower Galilee and has for a long time been a practitioner of family and Sharia law in Israel. Sharia courts were recognized by the State of Israel since the state's founding in 1948 and have been in the region of Israel since long before the British Mandate. The Sharia courts are dedicated to settling personal issues for Israel's Muslim community, from marriage, divorce, and domestic violence cases to religious conversion and inheritance. Knesset member Sulaiman of the Joint Arab List called the appointment an historic step in the Arab feminist movement in Israel, a step that benefits not only Arab Muslim women, but the entire Arab population. Hannah Khatib will be sworn in by Israeli President Rivlin in just a few weeks' time. My next guest today is in the studio as an up-and-coming Israeli-American artist, gaining notoriety for her own brand of music that fuses pop with the sounds of Africa, the Caribbean, and South America. Bodega, it is an honor to have you here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Wonderful. So what inspired you to become a musician first?
Well, first of all, I grew up in a household that was very artistic. My father is a fine artist, Benjamin Levy. My mother, Hannah Levy, is a musician. And we grew up in a house where there was always music around. I played violin as a young girl. And, you know, I just grew up with a lot of music in the house. We had Yemenite, Sephardic, and Dutch mix of everything.
So a lot of cultures kind of clashing in your living room.
And in New York City on top of it, so you can imagine.
I can. How many instruments do you play now?
Well, I play some guitar, but my real instrument is my voice. That's the main thing, and then I write as well.
So how did you start Bodega World Music then?
Yeah, Bodega World Music came about kind of in a natural way because I was always intrigued and into different cultures of music and sounds, and I was, as a dancer first, I was into hip-hop growing up in New York City and Latin music, and I studied world arts and cultures at UCLA, so I was kind of involved in that. And then as I started making music, I realized I was really into collaborating with different kinds of styles of music.
Kind of bringing that childhood back up, huh?
Exactly, but in my own way, you know? And so naturally Bodega World Music came up because I was during a time where the industry was changing a lot, and artists started becoming a lot more independent because I was signed with a big label with Black Round Universal Records, but then things kind of changed in the industry, and I decided to just take it into my own hands, and I realized I had my own kind of genre going, and why not just do it myself? You know?
So you mentioned that you're doing a lot of collaborative work. Who are some of the big names that you've been working with?
Well, I recently released a very big song in Africa called Wata, which is featuring Timaya and Young D. Timaya is one of the Afropop biggest artists, and he's known all over Africa and the Caribbean. MC Galaxy, which also a song called Fire. He's a very big artist. And I have a new song that we're putting out in the next few weeks called Live Your Life, with a big message. And it has Egyptian, it's a big Jamaican artist on it. MC Galaxy again, and a few other artists, Neil Bajayo, up-and-coming Israeli-American artist, and Neza and Young D and me, and we sing it in all different languages. There's some Hebrew, there's some French, there's some English, there's some African dialects, Jamaican, and because it's all pretty big artists, we're going to be spreading it out worldwide.
I mean, yes, speaking of African languages, I hear that you do a lot of work in Nigeria. What drew you to Nigeria and Nigerian music?
Well, Afropop, the Afropop genre right now is kind of the next big thing that's taking over. And Nigeria is the hub of it. Nigeria is the center of the Afropop music. So whatever sound is coming out of Nigeria with that music is really spreading so fast everywhere in Africa, but not just in Africa now. The US, Europe, and everywhere. Even here in Israel, I hear it. Yeah, they're picking up on it, and kind of like what happened with Caribbean and Jamaican music and with Latin music, how it spread all of a sudden and kind of took over the airwaves. Afropop is the thing now. So that's why I'm over there a lot, yeah.
And then as an Israeli-American artist, what was some of your experiences from that perspective, working in Africa and with all these different cultures?
Yeah, it's very interesting. The two countries I spent most time in Africa was Senegal and Nigeria. And I actually just got a lot of love. I got a lot of love. People, when I say Israel, they actually are like, wow, that's like, it's kind of like a holy land for them too.
Wow.
And I get props for it. I mean, they're just interested in hearing more about it. They're not everyone is that well versed about it, because what they hear in the news is very different from what's really going on here. So I kind of try to let them know that life here is great. Yeah. It's not just bombs and everything else.
Thankfully.
Yes, and they all want to come out here and check it out.
When can we get your next album or your next release?
Well, the next release after Wata is Live Your Life, which is in the next, keep an eye out for it in the next 4 weeks.
Okay.
We're going to be dropping it officially all over, including Israel.
On shelves, on iTunes.
On iTunes, all over online, and YouTube. You'll see a video coming soon because we're going to be shooting the video in a few different locations. And then the next project that my Bodega World Music is working on is executive producing an album for Maxi Priest. It's an Afro-pop album, even though he's a reggae Jamaican legend.
Right.
And we're putting different artists from Africa on it. So that combined with the foundation that we're working with, it's all kind of coming out together. So that's another project to look out for.
Well, yeah. I cannot wait to hear it. Thank you so much. Good luck.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Right. Appreciate it.
All right, now in an unprecedentedly large-scale revelation, the Edmund de Rothschild Foundation, Caesarea Development Corporation, Israel Antiquities Authority, and the Israel Nature and Parks Authority have announced their cooperation in unveiling, conserving, and making accessible all the important public and ancient landmarks of the city of Caesarea, as well as the adjacent parks and beaches. The Ancient Caesarea Renewal Project was announced earlier today at a press conference in the ancient city and reveals that the aforementioned organizations are attempting to promote Caesarea as the foremost antiquities site in Israel, along with the holy city of Jerusalem. The target is to bring 3 million tourists to Caesarea by 2030, and also at the press conference a number of major archaeological discoveries were presented for the first time. The first was an incredible vault system that stood in the western wall of the seaside Caesarea temple. Second was a large stone altar that sat in the front of the temple, which has been likened to the peace altar constructed by Emperor Augustus in Rome. Several smaller altars were found alongside the main one, along with several deep holes thought to hold either torches or symbols of the Roman legion carried by soldiers on poles, called standards. Further still, the ancient synagogue in Caesarea, which was first discovered in the 1940s, was also unveiled. It's believed to have been built nearly 1,500 years ago during the time of King Herod, and is adorned with menorah symbols, mosaics, and Hebrew inscriptions. These were just some of the incredible finds revealed today to the public that are now available for all to see. Now, with all the incredible things that Israel has to offer, it is no wonder that people from all over the world find all sorts of reasons to want to move here. But for some, their reasons could shock the rest of us. 31-year-old British native James Hirschfield made Aliyah 2 years ago, but his reasons for coming and what he left behind are more than most could imagine. Hirschfield had both a successful career as a model and as a pro golf course coach in the United States. But one day, seemingly at the drop of a hat, he realized he just had to move to Israel. Speaking with the Jerusalem Post, he said, quote, "At the time, modeling was exciting, something fresh, a little bit different. If perhaps something didn't kind of start a fire in my heart that made me come to Israel, there's a chance I might have carried on modeling," end quote. What was it that started the fire? Apparently, serving in the IDF. He said, quote, "I decided I couldn't live outside of Israel while there are 18, 19, and 20-year-olds protecting and giving their lives to defend the country that if something were to happen, me and my family would go to," end quote. Unfortunately, the IDF didn't share his passion. Making Aliyah at the age of 29, he said he received no after no after no from the army. But finally, after 2 whole years of fighting with the defense authorities, he is donning his uniform and began basic training, leaving his recent interview saying, quote, "I hope that I'll be able to inspire people in Israel and all around the world to know what Israel stands for and how important it is to be here, and that without an army here, there might not be a country at all." Well, I think I can speak on behalf of many when I say to you, James, mission accomplished. IDC Summer Ulpan, open for everyone. And now for a Hebrew word of the day. Between the startup CEOs, world-class educators, and other incredible figures throughout Israel, it's easy to find some model to be inspired by. So today's word is dugman, meaning model. Though a male dugman or female dugmanit literally translates to a human model, the word comes from the root degem, meaning a physical model, like a new car on the lot, for example. From this word, we can also get dugma, meaning example. So as you can see by my dugmaot, or examples, there are as many ways to utilize this word as there are dugmanim, or models, to choose from. Just make sure that when you pick your dugman, it's a positive one. Let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight, the skies should be partly cloudy with a low of 60 or 16 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, you can expect more cloudy skies and a rise in temperatures to an expected high of 77 or 25 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.64 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Aaron Porras, and thanks for watching.